Do you have constitutional questions? Get constitutional answers. We'll be answering your constitutional questions live, so get ready to call in now. Are you a prosecutor, law enforcement officer, or local government employee? Want to make sure you are executing the laws in a constitutional manner? Are you a city council member, township board member, or state legislator? Want to ensure the laws you pass are constitutional? Perhaps you're a citizen who wants to know the proper limits on government and the protections for your God-given liberties. Regardless of your role, call me, Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, with your constitutional questions during our live call-in show now at the phone number listed on the screen. And remember, together we can restore freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello there. Hello to those of us joining from Michigan, Pennsylvania. I don't remember where Mile High Medic might be from, but hello and welcome, everyone. I am Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, and this is Restore Freedom Weekly. This is the time for you to call in and ask your constitutional and legal questions. And let's see, I think we were expecting some people calling back that had reached in some prior shows, so we'll see if we do get those calls today. Hello from Texas and California. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. Reminds me, I got to grab my notes for today. As we get callers, I like to make sure I have my notes in front of me. Let's see. All right, so, and yes, hello, Chelsea. Did the baby come yet? That's what I want to know. I was just sitting here thinking, did their baby come yet? So I want to know. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and put on our screen from hello to Blue Line Transparency and Disabled Outcast, Integrity Now News. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. You're on time for once. I'm on time for once, too. It's great. She did. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on baby number 3. I'll look forward to maybe getting a sneak peek on Thursday when you guys are interviewing me. So, 2 a.m. So you must be exhausted because you were at least laboring from, well, I guess since you sent me the email, I don't know what time that initial email came. So at least about 12 hours. So that's exhausting for sure. All right. So, if you guys haven't heard of the Flat Out Truth, they have a new platform that they're building, and I got a sneak peek at it last night. Looks like a bunch of interesting stuff about the law and the Constitution, stuff about health, stuff about the Bible, all kinds of stuff in there. Just places like basically an alternative Facebook, if you will, places for people to chat, people can post articles, share links, all kinds of stuff on there. So check it out. It sounds like they're on all the social media platforms, so you can find them that way, which I'm sure will then link you back to their own platform that they have started. So I don't see Lori in the chat just yet. I'm going to send a message real quick and see if she's going to be helping us in the chat today. I know she's had some stuff going on recently. So she may not be able to okay, so I threw that in there. And all right, So, all right, we'll wait to see if she joins us in the chat, because you know what she does. She handles all the background stuff and types stuff in, so I could just keep talking, because multitasking, typing, and talking to you guys at the same time isn't my strong suit anymore. So anyway, if you have a question and you don't feel comfortable or can't, for whatever reason, call in, go ahead and put... Okay, so put it in the format that I just shared there. So put the word question in all caps. It helps me visually grab on and know that you're asking me a question and that it's not just chat amongst yourselves in the chat there. And then go ahead and put the rest of the question in normal capitalization so it doesn't seem like you're screaming at me for the duration of your question. So go ahead and put it in that format to get the best response or best chance of me getting a... getting to see it and getting a response out to you. But I do encourage you to go ahead and call. Sometimes we've had lots of calls, people calling in from all over. We've had people calling in even from overseas, which is great. Speaking of which, good afternoon. This is Catherine. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, this is JC from Pennsylvania.
Yes, I recognize your voice. How are things going over in Pennsylvania in the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Well, for some reason on the docket sheet, the lawyer representing the group home decided to remove himself from the case. So I have no clue what's going on. I know that at the last meeting, they were going into executive session to speak about it. So I don't know what happened.
Did you by any chance get to read that case that I had tagged you in on my YouTube profile, community profile?
Yes, I did, and thank you very much for it.
So did it seem to grab you as, like, when you're reading it going, wow, this seems kind of like it's relevant to what's going on in this situation?
Exactly. So, I got to find out somehow, and unless I talk to the solicitor tonight at the meeting and ask her what happened, if she'll tell me. Because our zoning hearing board attorney doesn't tell us anything.
Yeah.
What's going on.
Right. Well,
But
make sure to pass that case along. I would actually do this. I would pass along that, and find the parts that you think are the most important, and maybe highlight those, or, however you want to do it. If you just want to give them excerpts of that and then give them a link to the rest of the case, or if you want to actually print out the case and physically highlight parts, whatever you do, I would suggest that you give them access to the whole thing, but highlight the parts that really speak to you and share it with your Zoning Board of Appeals fellow members, as well as, the bigger committee. I don't know if it's commission, city commission, county. I don't remember the details in that regard, but you know what I'm saying. The next higher up board, so to speak, in your community. And then is also, I would also share it with the group home themselves. And
that
go ahead.
That was one of my questions, if I could do that.
Absolutely, you could share information. It's a public case, and it it speaks volumes. For those of you who are not aware what I'm talking about, you can take a look at I think it was two and a half weeks ago, on my YouTube community platform. I shared a link to Jay Curvitt and said, hey, I think this is, speaks about your case. I just came across it when I was reading, I don't know, updates on some other case, I guess. And the situation that we have here, this is, we jumped right on in, but this is a person calling from Pennsylvania who serves on a zoning board of appeals. And the issue is there's a group, an individual who owns property, who owns a home, and they wanted to essentially open up a a residence for adult disabled community members, and so the community, a few people in the community spoke out against it, and democracy mob rule, if you want to think about it that way. A few very loud, obnoxious, uneducated voices had their opinions well known that they didn't want this kind of thing in their neighborhood, and essentially the rest of the board basically voted against our caller and said, no, you can't have that here. And so the owner of the property ended up filing a lawsuit and bringing it to court, and we're just finding out now that their attorney, for whatever reason, is deciding to try to step out of the case. So usually there is, you said it was on the docket that they're trying to get out of the case. Usually there's a motion, and the motion has to give some sort of specifics as to why. Like, if the client hasn't paid their fee, or, if there's some sort of breakdown of the attorney-client relationship. So you might want to take a closer look at that docket and see what documents were filed with that, and just look directly, because that's probably going to be the place where you're going to get the best information. I wouldn't rely on the attorneys that have been, refusing to give you information so far to this point on your side. And just to be clear to the listeners, the attorneys that have been the least forthcoming with information to her are actually supposedly essentially representing her and the board. But of course, they're representing the interests of that loud, obnoxious, intolerant few who just don't want this kind of house in their neighborhood. And so also for those of you who are maybe joining us new and didn't catch previous episodes where we talked about this, when I was in college, I actually worked I was a direct support professional in a group home of 4 developmentally disabled women. The youngest was 18, the oldest I think was 60 at the time, and that was my full-time job while I was putting myself through college. So it was, I have a heart for people with disabilities of all kinds. I too have a disability. Mine's a hearing disability. But at any rate, it's not right, and it's a denial of fair housing amongst many other things. It's a denial of the property owner's ability to use his property for the intended residential purposes. Just when you have adult disabled people, they oftentimes are not set up well enough to be able to live on their own and purchase their own houses or rent their own houses outright. So it works better to be able to pool their resources and live together in a community of, say, 3 or 4 or 5 individuals together, depending on the size of the home. So so you're, I would definitely share the information. And like I said, especially if you're just sharing the case, and you're sharing it the same way that you share it to, anybody else, and offer it up to members of the public. When I was on the planning commission in our small town in Michigan, and then I was also on the downtown development authority, those are the 2 boards that I was on. I was having issues where I was being singled out because I actually wanted to follow the Constitution, and I wanted to follow the constitutionally enacted laws and preserve people's rights and that kind of thing. And so I started a Facebook group, Citizens Holding Belding City Government Accountable. And it's still out there if you want to see it. I haven't touched it in a long, long time, almost a decade, but it's still there. And so people can go and just kind of see as an example, but you might consider having something like that where it's a social media platform, maybe it's your own, WordPress website, whatever it is, where you have the ability to just upload documents, upload concerns, pictures, whatever, exhibits of things, where you're explaining your concerns about things. Maybe it's just a separate Facebook profile that you make specifically for, government concerns. That would be a good platform for you to be able to, share documents, share information, and then if you shared the link to that information with the the individual, the owner of the home, that kind of thing. It's just publicly accessible information anyway that you're just trying to make even more publicly accessible because it is pertinent to the situation that you guys are dealing with. So, yeah, there's nothing that would stop you from sharing information like that.
Well, I started one 5 years ago. It's called the Manor Council Report. And everything that goes on, I share it with them, the community. And I have another question for you. Tonight, they're doing a public meeting for chickens. Now, the ordinance is 11 pages long, which is quite ridiculous. But the question that I have is that it's so overreached in making people do certain things that are just unbelievable, and for people to get an approval letter from the landlord if they rent to be able to have chickens. Well, the thing that's going on now is occupancy permits, because one of the council members wants to know what everybody's business is, that to know where everybody lives. And I feel that it's an outreach that they would do that. So I would like your opinion on that. And the other question would be, can I speak on it, an ordinance, even though I'm on the zoning hearing board?
Okay, so your first question is about, I guess I'm confused, the occupancy permit question or about the...
Well, I've never seen an ordinance, and they write their ordinances up wrong. They never have definitions. They never spell out things completely as it should be, and it's 11 pages long for an ordinance for chickens.
Right.
Because people want chickens, which I don't see any problem with them having any chickens, people having chickens, but they're strict on how you can have chickens. And I just don't believe that government should, especially in my community, because we're so rural, that they would have these strict conditions with a, you have to pay to get a permit, and then the zoning officer comes out and makes sure that your chicken coop is right and gets inspections, and you have to have a vet, and we don't have a chicken vet, and asking the landlord to fill out a paper complying that people can have chickens. It's ridiculous to me in this community.
So I would say, depending on, you'd have to kind of look at what each of the requirements are to address it individually, because some may be legitimate, some may not. So, for example, I could see a purpose in, and I'm not saying this is my final answer, but my initial reaction to, if you're a renter, that you would need to have the permission of your landlord in writing before you have a chicken coop or whatever. I could see the purpose in that, because they're not the owner of the property, and that is not a typical residential use of a property. And it's the same thing as, generally speaking, there's prohibitions against having pets, just, cats or dogs or any kind of other pets, gerbils or rabbits or whatever, right? There's oftentimes restrictions about that in residential landlord-tenant settings. So I could see how that would extend, as well to chickens, because there can be some sort of impacts on the property. And, what if the property doesn't already have some sort of chicken coop or structure that would be otherwise required? Perhaps, the property the landlord doesn't want another structure put on the property. There could be, some reasons for that apply to a landlord-tenant situation. I don't know that it would be proper to be in the context of an ordinance. That probably should just be something that's more dealt with between the landlord and the tenant. Again, I'm just kind of thinking through these issues as I'm, hearing them and speaking to you. But as far as having I can't even say it with a straight face, as far as having a specified vet for chickens, especially in a community where you don't have a chicken vet, that seems quite absurd. I mean, absolutely quite absurd. Now, I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to, so I do know that there have been concerns in recent years about bird flu affecting chicken populations. I know that in Michigan, for example, there were a few, I can't even think of what the word would be, but farms, that doesn't seem right. But places like even one in Ionia County that we used to, we've gone into they have a store as well, with produce and things like that. But anyway, where their chicken supply was, they, largely killed off with bird flu and whatever. There were some issues. So I guess I could potentially see why you might need to be able to point to a vet for the purposes of, if something like that comes to your community, how are people going to handle it? Are they already going to have something in place to be able to handle that? Who are they going to look to? Do they have a veterinarian medicine provider that can answer their questions or give them advice on what to do with their stock, their livestock or their flock, whatever. I don't even know what you call a group of chickens. I call it dinner, but so that's, what I mean? Like I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, and I could see that there might be, some need just to be able for the person to have access to that information, so they can, put themselves in a position of being able to make an informed choice, because I could see how something could potentially affect neighboring homes if you had an entire flock of chickens that all had whatever, bird flu or some other thing going on. But, do they then require that of, so flipping back over devil's advocate to the other side, does your community have a similar vet requirement for if you wanted to have any kind of other grouping of animals? If you had several cats, is there any kind of ordinance about, well, if you have 4 or 5 or 6 cats, you have to have, you have to have a veterinarian.
That's a good point.
Lined up, or, if your community allows in certain, areas, cows or sheep or pigs or whatever, is there a similar requirement to have a veterinarian already established or on the books, so to speak, for that, that particular person or farmer or whatever? Or if somebody has goats, I know that's kind of like a new craze, is getting goats. So, those would be some, what I would say, some potential equal protection issues that might arise. So I guess I gave you a lot of different feedback in all different directions. And I would say maybe just taking some of those things, looking further, looking further into your ordinances to see what is there. And then if you do want to speak on those things at, is it a city council? Is that the bigger body?
Yes.
Okay. That, if you want to go and speak on issues at a city council, I'll tell you, they may try to stop you. In fact, given what I've heard from you so far, they likely will try to stop you and intimidate you and tell you can't. However,
I got the cops called on me last month.
Well, before we go down there, to answer your question about if you could speak at the city council meeting, when I served as the I think I was chair or vice chair of one of them. I don't remember if it was DDA. It was probably Downtown Development Authority. And then, like I said, I also served on the Planning Commission. Those were both boards that were essentially under the city council for our city. And that did not stop me one iota from going to the city council meetings and speaking at public comment time, because just because you serve in a government capacity does not mean that you lose all of your constitutionally protected rights, like your right to petition your government for redress of grievances. What it means is that when you are serving in that role, you can't, in that role, necessarily claim a First Amendment protection. But, you know, if you are an individual going to your city council meetings, you're going there as a resident. You're going there as a citizen. You're not going there as a zoning board of appeals member, you know, per se. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
Just make that clear. Make that clear that you're not speaking on behalf of the board in which you serve. That you are there as, you know, I'm here as a resident. Sometimes they have you say your name and your address or whatever. So I'm Susie Q, 123 Main Street, and I'm here in my individual capacity. And maybe you're speaking on behalf of some neighbors or whatever. Then you can identify them, or you could say, you know, I have a long list here of neighbors and residents of the community who agree with the position I'm making today. And so instead of us each getting up to talk about the same issue, I'm just going to hold this up. And if anybody wants to see this long list of people that agree with this position and hold the same views I do, you're more than welcome to inspect it. But for time's sake, I'm just going to continue on and then get right on into it and just say there's significant overreach. I'm concerned about this part of this, you know, this ordinance, and here's why I'm concerned, and here's what you can do to fix it. And so that's, you know, that I would say that's your obligation. If you see something wrong happening in your community, to do something to speak up and get those legislative changes made. You know, be the voice, be the one that's willing to stand up and start speaking out. And we know you do that in the other aspects, but by all means, that could and should carry on over into speaking. You know, it's just the same as you going, you know, to, oh, don't laugh at me. I was gonna say Lansing, you're not in Michigan. And then my brain froze. I'm like, wait, all these cities are coming into my mind about Pennsylvania. And then I started thinking about things like Transylvania and Hershey's chocolate and all these things. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. So anyway, I just had to laugh at myself because all I wanted to do was say, going to your state's capital, and then that train derailed in my head. But anyway, you know what I mean? It'd be the same thing as you going to DC and wanting to speak at committee hearings, or you going to your state's, you know, capital hearings, or, you know, whatever, you know what I mean? So you have a right to petition your government for redress of grievances. And I've actually had to litigate this very issue, because when I sued the city of Belding and the city manager in particular for violating my rights, and she was trying to get me thrown off of the boards that I was on because she didn't like me speaking out at public meetings. It was a very much, the two were related. I was speaking at city council meetings, so she was trying to get me thrown off my boards. And then because I sued her for trying to violate my rights in that and other ways as well, it was a 7-count complaint. Then they moved it to federal court. I actually had to fight in federal court with the magistrate, and because they were trying to say to me that I had no right to speak at the city council meetings because I was suing them, and I had no right to reach out and talk to the city council members individually because they had an attorney and I was an attorney. So I, as an attorney, could not speak to the opposing attorney's client without their permission. And I said, screw you. You guys got to read the Constitution. Because just because I am an attorney does not mean I lose my rights as an individual citizen. And I am talking to my government officials, and I am petitioning my government for a redress of grievances. And I absolutely and unequivocally do not lose those rights just because I am an attorney or just because I serve on a board. I retain those rights as an individual. and as a member of this community and as a resident of the city. So I actually fought those very points in federal district court. So anyway, so yes, I would definitely go ahead and speak um, on those issues once you've educated yourself on what the specific concerns are. And I would narrow it down maybe to your, depending on how big of an issue it is, how long it would take you to fully talk about it, and how many minutes you get at a meeting. Let's say you get 3 minutes, because that's a typical time at a meeting like that. And let's say you have 3 concerns, but each one, to do it justice, would take you at least 2, maybe up to 3 minutes. I would go ahead and spread it out over 3 weeks time then, or 3 meetings times, and say, this is my first of 3 issues that I have. This issue with this ordinance is blah, 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 and like lay it out. And like I said, you tell them what the problem is, you explain it, and then you give them a solution. Here is how you can fix it, and make it very clear and straightforward. And not that they have to take that particular route, maybe they take another route to fixing it, but at least you're not just complaining, you're giving them the opportunity to fix it. And then the next week or the next meeting, you go in and say, okay, just like last week, I spoke about this ordinance with the chickens, and only this time, this is issue number 2 I have with that ordinance. Here's what the problem is, etc. You follow the pattern, but each week you say, this is a different aspect where we have significant government overreach. Here's why, but here's what you could do about it. And maybe it's just deleting that portion of the ordinance altogether. Maybe it's making some wording modifications. Who knows? It just depends on what the situation is. So hopefully that gives you an answer there.
Definitely, because I already have it prepared. I've gone through the statutes of PA with the chickens, other people's ordinances in the county for chickens, and court cases with chickens. So I'm building what I'm going to say and just see what happens.
And I always found it helpful when I had, like when I was speaking out against the governor and the legislature in Michigan in 2020, I made a whole website. Stop COVID Chaos was actually the first website I ever made. And then I went to, like when I was dealing with the city issues a few years prior to that, or 5 years prior to that, I had just had that Facebook page. So wherever it was, I had something that was publicly accessible. So if it is Facebook, I would just make each post or each document you upload, a public post. But I would have things uploaded ahead of time, if at all possible, so people could see that. So when I spoke about it, I could give them a reference and say, and if, here are, I have uploaded at this particular link, and maybe make it super, if it's your own website, for example, you can make all kinds of short links, restorefreedomkh.com/obcase, right? So on that one link, I have all kinds of documents, and you could say, and on that link, you could see the court case I'm talking about. You could see the Pennsylvania statutes I'm talking about. You could see the problems with our ordinance, and how the part I have highlighted is the part that we're talking about today. I've also uploaded on there some articles about whatever XYZ issues. I've also separately uploaded the parts of the ordinances where we, deal with cats and dogs, and how we don't require you to have a vet, or don't, whatever the situation is. So if you make it so that you're doing your homework not only for yourself, but then you're making it publicly accessible ahead of time, and then when you're speaking about it, then you've covered all your bases. It's not just you getting up there and complaining. You're telling people, even those that are listening in the crowd, because I was speaking to them as much as I was speaking to the people serving on the board, right? Serving on city commission or city council. I was saying to everyone sitting in that room, hey, check out this, check out the Facebook page, check out this website. When I stood on the steps of the Capitol many, many times in 2020 speaking on these issues, I was telling people, go to that website. In fact, I didn't know I was going to speak. I think I had less than 48 hours to when I knew I was going to speak on the steps of the Capitol on April 30th, 2020. I think it was like 36 or 38 hours notice that I had. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to speak? Great. What am I going to speak about? And so I put together a speech, and then I wanted people to be able to have access to all kinds of information, statistics. And, at that time it was the beginning of all this COVID stuff, right? So there's just, everything was very, very much based on the patterns and the numbers and the number of cases and this and that and number of deaths and all this kind of stuff. And so I wanted to have accurate, verifiable data that people could, click a link and find it. So I literally made the website the night before. I called my dad. I'm like, I'm speaking in Lansing on the steps of the Capitol tomorrow. Can you get this domain for me? And we're just going to put I don't even remember. I think we had 2 things on it at by that first day. And then we started putting more and more on it. And then it became even bigger from there. But the point is, it was important to me to be able to reference that and say to people, so go to stopcovidchaos.com, where I have the speech, I have more information, and I'll continue to put more information out there for people. So anyway, if you keep a consistent way where people can find you and find that information, like you said, you had started a platform or a newsletter or something about that, just make sure it maintains a publicly accessible side to it, so that anybody can access that and go, oh, okay, right? I have given you enough food for thought, I think, on all of that.
You have.
But I appreciate you calling in, and I'll look forward to hearing some updates about the group home case, as well as what you decided to do or what you learned, and how you presented it for the chicken ordinance situation as well.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it.
Yes, have a great day.
You too.
Thank
Bye.
You. Okay, so I wanted to take a minute, and I know we had some people that were going to call in, but now that our chat got rolling, I wanted to just trying to scroll to see. Oh, I wonder if that's John Kulik. He and I have had issues with connecting before, so we'll see if he can give us a call back in. Okay, so also, I don't know if this is what he was going to call about, but I couldn't help but see, and my eyes got all big when I saw this at 12:19. Oh, well, we'll let him talk about it. Hello, this is Catherine. Oh, we almost had him. I have no idea what happens with that, but anyway, he said presidential electors case got dismissed. That is awesome news. I hope to hear more about it. Hopefully we can connect here. Are you there? Can you hear me? Because I can hear the relay of my voice in the background.
Yes, Miss Henry. This is John Q. Public in the chat. How are you?
Yes, good. I'm excited to see what you posted a little bit ago, that the presidential electors case got dismissed.
Yes, I was just up there in Lansing, and we were up there, and we were there in 54-2, Judge Simmons' courtroom, and the presidential electors case was totally dismissed, and was basically on intent, that there was no intent to do any wrongdoing. And so that's what it was based upon.
That's awesome.
And so the ones that remained on the 8 charges were basically conspiracy, uttering and publishing, forgery, and election law violations. They've all been dismissed.
That's awesome.
So we have a really great attorney general candidate, Kevin Kayiski, who is one of the attorneys for one of the presidential electors, and he was very brilliant in the courtroom there. And maybe the judge felt a little bit under a little pressure there. I don't know. But it was kind of interesting because family members were left out of the courtroom, specifically Matt Maddox and his daughter, because Michonne was one of the defendants, and then there were other family members. And interesting to see that members of the press were not able to get in there, too. So that was cool.
Yeah, that is extremely strange. Okay. Well,
So let me get to my situation here, if that's cool, because I know you're probably short on time. Given this information here about these individuals that were Republicans, and of course I'm a Republican myself.
actually,
But,
let me give
you know,
let me have you pause just one
Go
second, because I just wanted to say one thing about that. With you saying that it was
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
dismissed because of with the lack of intent. Some of you may very well know this, but for those of you who don't, in general, you cannot be convicted of a crime in the United States unless you have criminal intent. That is mens rea. If you don't have mens rea, then you don't have the criminal mind, the criminal act, you don't intend to commit a crime, then you cannot be charged, or you cannot be found guilty anyway. The general exception to that is for strict liability offenses. So, for example, statutory rape is one that comes to mind. That if you're going to have sexual relations with someone, you better darn well figure out how to make sure. You can't just say, well, I didn't know that the person was under 18, or whatever your state's laws are about the age limitations there. You have to figure that out and handle that accordingly, because you will be held to having that knowledge, essentially. But in most situations, you have to have a criminal intent in order to be found guilty of a crime. So here, when they had the various counts of, supposedly forging documents, that's signing the Michigan electors documentation and sending it off to DC, so they would hopefully certify the, alternate electors, all the pieces to that, the conspiracy and all that stuff. You can't have conspiracy to commit a crime if you never intended to commit a crime. If you were, if there's any kind of factual discrepancy like what happened in 2020, they were openly trying to say, hey, listen, he didn't win Michigan, Trump won Michigan, and therefore we as the Trump electors need to submit our documentation in time to get to DC and have our voices in Michigan heard. So at any rate, I'm glad that justice was finally done there. I know Michonne. I think Marianne Sheridan was one of them. I'm trying to remember. Kathy, what the heck is her last name? I don't know. We're friends on Facebook. She's got the short white hair, and she's served as in various roles before, RNC, that kind of thing. My good friend Ken, he takes pictures. Kind of think what his Facebook name is, but anyway, he and his wife Darlene, they take pictures at all the Republican events all over Michigan. He was one of the electors from Ionia County. Anyway, lots of people that I know personally, and I'm glad that this whole chapter gets to be closed and put behind them. It's frustrating that it has taken this long, but at least finally justice has prevailed on that. So anyway, with that being said, take it away. What is the update about your case?
Well, and I wanted to add that to that real quick, because that's exactly what I was going to touch on. But my friend here says the punishment is in the process. And if you have seen the amount of legal bills that these individuals, these defendants have racked up, this is the lawfare that exists against the Republican Party, is the lawfare. Dana Nessel had unlimited resources. She has 600, and that's not a joke, that's not outrageous. She has 600 attorneys in the Attorney General's office to go after people with, and unlimited resources that are provided to her to go after people. And this is the lawfare here in the state of Michigan. The process is the punishment. It literally is for any criminal defendant. and because the prosecutor's office and the attorney general have unlimited resources. But yeah, getting back to my situation, so mine has to deal with the Second Amendment issue, and also this evidentiary hearing I just went through was about the plate issue, which was the initial reason for the stop. So the judge,
Hold on. Give me one
okay.
second. I just see in the chat, you guys are saying that I'm super quiet. It might be because I messed with the volume and a mic on a pre-interview thing I did last night. Can you guys hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me now, because I turned it up a little bit, but I also don't want to turn it up too loud. Okay, so I'm sorry, you guys. I'm seeing that too late that you guys are saying that the volume is bad. So somebody quick, I want to hear his update. So I just want to make sure that my volume is good to go. I know there's a delay, but it's like it's the mic on your computer. Okay, well, let me see. No, it's the right mic. It's definitely the right mic, because I muted that mic, and that's, but can you guys hear me now? I wish I knew what 5x5 meant. A bunch of people are saying that. I feel like I'm missing. No noticeable change. Same volume. Need more volume. Okay, give me. Sorry, John Q. Public. Give me just a second here.
I'm here. I'm patient.
I mean, it's at 100%. That's a slow way to handle it. Okay, let me see. Okay, I turned the microphone up. So, yeah. So it's at 125%. I don't want to blast you guys out into oblivion. 5x5 equals you can hear clearly. How do all of you know that? That's great. So some of you are saying loud and clear, so now I might have made it too bad, but the gain is still down, so the caller is twice as loud. Okay. Well, if any of you are here and you want to join, okay, I turned down the Google Voice app. Yeah, I have mine at 125% now, and I have the Google Voice app at 85. So, okay, so I did turn it, let me turn it down a little bit more for him. So he's at 75% now, and I'm at 125%. So can I speak into the microphone? Well, I mean, I am speaking into the microphone. It's right in front of me. But thank you, Mr. Henry, Captain Obvious. I mean, if you want me to literally hold it up like this is the microphone, but I never hold it this close to my face. So, okay. Some of you are saying you can hear me loud and clear. Some of you are saying you can hardly hear me at all, and then your ears are blown off when you hear the caller speaking. So I'm just trying to find the happy medium. I don't think we've had this issue before, and I only touched one button last night, and I put it back, and somehow that didn't fix it. So anyway, hopefully you guys can hear me. When I had it close, it was better. Yeah, but I can't hold the microphone that close to my face. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know, guys. I turned it up even more from the microphone side of things, so hopefully we're good, because I want to get rolling. But let me know, I guess, if you guys have issues, and I'll try to keep an eye on it. But in the meantime, let's get back. Can I use the mic in your headset? this other mic is terrible. It's not a directional mic. It's mic out here. It's one of these guys. So, okay. Okay, I'm going to not worry about it and carry on per the advice of the last commenter. All right, so take it away. Tell me more about where you just had a hearing in your own case. This was the Second Amendment case, right, that we're talking about?
Yes. Yes. So this evidentiary hearing that was was Monday, right? Yeah, it was just this Monday. It had to do with the initial reason for the stop, which was the veteran's license plate. So recently here in Michigan in 2022, the law was changed that disabled combat veterans and disabled veterans plates don't expire in the state of Michigan anymore. The registrations don't expire until you transfer them to another vehicle, so on and so forth. This was the initial reason for the stop. Well, Jocelyn Benson never issued out the new registrations that said NOx EXP on it, or the new sticker decals that would go on there for the little handicap symbol that would go onto your plate, your pre-existing plate. So this is the whole reason for the stop, and then led to the Second Amendment thing with the firearm being in the vehicle. Well, initially she has said in the first motion to dismiss and motion to suppress the firearm that the Second Amendment doesn't have any place in her courtroom. She was not concerned about intent. She just blatantly said Second Amendment argument does not have any place in her courtroom. So then the next thing we're trying to do was a fruit of the poisonous tree, which was the initial reason for the stop, which was the plate issue. Since the plates are not expiring, the registrations are not expiring anymore. Well, the prosecutor, which I'm not going to get his name again, but we all know who that is in Macomb County.
You're getting, it's something's happening, at least for me. It's getting very hard for me to hear you. It's not so much that it's quiet, it's like,
okay.
Oh, there you are.
Is that better?
Yes, you were talking directly into the microphone. Okay.
So the Macomb County prosecutor, which I'm not going to reiterate his name again, but he decided that he's going to fight the plate issue and say that it's not valid, and the judge bought the argument. So now there's nothing there. So now the only option left is they're still pressing, and this is a policy of the prosecutor. It's not a law in Michigan. It's a policy that they do a mental health illness examination upon a person when there is charges filed against an individual having to do with a firearm. So now this is where we're at with this case now. And I find this very interesting because this case that we just went to today, no, they're two totally different issues, but where was the intent of wrongdoing? There was no intent of wrongdoing. The law was changed, and also we have a Second Amendment issue, which is a federal issue or a constitutional issue that should trump any of this state sovereignty nonsense that they're trying to explain, that they have state sovereignty so they can make up whatever laws they want to do about the Second Amendment, and it'll hold water. So again, I'm trying to figure out how
your first issue, though, the threshold issue of the stop and a valid reason for the stop and challenging the stop, that's a constitutional issue. It's a due process issue because you had the now let me ask you this. When they ran if they were to run your plates, would your plates have shown as unexpired in the computer systems that they have access to? Whatever, I don't remember.
No, because Jocelyn Benson has not, our Secretary of State in Michigan, for those who don't know who that is, Jocelyn Benson has not done her job as far as that is concerned with coming compliance of the law. And the judge is not willing to hold her accountable. She's willing to hold me accountable.
That's interesting. So here's the difference with that. The lens, and I'm just thinking through this because obviously it irritates the crap out of me that there's this injustice with a due process issue that they didn't have a valid reason for the stop. However, thinking on the other side of things, the court looks at your, your situation, similar situations, when they're looking at the reason for a stop, that they're not looking for the criminal intent. They're looking at, did the cop have, was there a reason? Was there a good reason to believe that there was a legal violation there, a law violation? And so if it looked like you had the wrong color tag, that it was going to be the wrong year or whatever, they got closer, they ran the plates and they're like, yep, it's not, it's expired. That in and of itself is a, having expired plates in Michigan is something that they can pull you over for without violating the law. They're not violating your rights in that regard. So it's a really crappy situation for someone like you, because you didn't do anything wrong and you didn't create that situation. It's another government actor that created that problem, and she should be held accountable. But I do understand why in that context, because that question that you're posing about whether the stop was valid, the cop didn't do anything wrong in that regard, if that makes sense.
Right. We're not saying that at no time is it being iterated that the police did anything wrong. The argument is because the law had been changed, and the police officers were informed that the law had been changed, that they should have known better not to do the stop in the first place.
Well, again, that does sound like you're saying they did something wrong, but they shouldn't have known better. There was nothing for them to know better, because you're saying that when they ran your plates, from the information they would have access to, it looked like you had an expired plate because Jocelyn Benson didn't do her job. So
right.
If it's true that all they had to do, let's say it was just the sticker, right? Let's say the systems were updated, but Jocelyn Benson never sent out an updated, sticker to put on top of your license plate or whatever that gave them the visual cue. If that were the case and they just never ran your plate, but if they had ran your plate, they would have seen that it's, disabled veteran status, non-expired, whatever the situation is. That would be a different scenario. That would be where they should have known, they could have known, and therefore they acted poorly and they violated your rights. And so therefore any evidence that was seized as a base, from that stop should be thrown out. But because the question is, in that context, did the cops act, did they violate your rights? Did they have a reason to legally stop you at that particular time? And because of a different government actor not doing her damn job, because she's so focused on violating people's rights and keeping them from carrying firearms near polling precincts and all the rest of that stuff, then that caused the police to be able to not have access to information that would have changed the outcome here. But because they were within, they couldn't have known. They shouldn't have known. They couldn't have known. It was what Jocelyn Benson did wrong there. So at any rate, I just wanted to kind of flesh that out because it initially seemed wrong, but now I understand why they would have to agree that in the context of your stop, it's not that you're being held accountable for that. That's not the question. You get punished in the from the outcome of that, but that the question isn't about you at all. The question is, did the cops have the reason to believe there was a law violation taking place in front of them? So at any rate, okay. So
that seems to be the issue, is that the new plates that are issued out for disabled veterans, which come out new, they would already be embossed with the information on there, and anybody that's a disabled combat veteran, for new plates, that would be done that way. But anything that's a pre-existing plate, if you're a pre-existing disabled veteran or disabled combat veteran and you have an old plate and you just need to get the decals, the Secretary of State has never submitted them out to the individuals and never submitted out new registration and updated the computers. So exactly for the reasons what you described is exactly why she says nope. And we're not going to hold Jocelyn Benson accountable. She would not even allow for her to be subpoenaed so she could testify as to why she has not done what she was supposed to do in the circuit court. The judge wasn't going to allow that.
And I hate to say this, but that I actually do understand. It doesn't seem fair and just to you, but in the context of your case, she's not a party to it. It would be a different story. And it feels wrong because she's part of the government and the cop's part of the government, the prosecutor's part of the government. And so it's all this on the side of the government that is outside of your control. And I get that. And it feels inherently wrong. But at least this is, the rest of your case is, it's just disturbing and disgusting and, pisses me off. But this tiny aspect, I get why they wouldn't entertain having Jocelyn Benson have to answer for this, because it's not the right time or place. That's not the question that was before the court. If the question was tied to, if your charge was solely an expired plates charge, that would be where it would be appropriate for you to say, no, I want her subpoenaed for this. And it would make sense that's the whole thing, right? You're not guilty of that offense, but we're way beyond that. It's not about that. It's about what they found in the vehicle because of the stop that related to what she did. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So
no, it makes sense because that's exactly what she did. She said it doesn't matter. There doesn't have to be intent. This is what it is. And she's not buying any arguments that are being provided by the court-appointed public defender. So that's we're up to the point where I have to prove that I'm not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs here, which is ridiculous. And I mean, it's absolutely nuts. I mean, we've got people around the country doing horrific things to people, and you're going to go after a law-abiding individual that carried most of their life, and you're trying to criminalize that person. It doesn't make any sense. But
no, and I think that, as we've mentioned before, I'm disgusted that it's a Republican who I've spoken with, that it's this prosecuting attorney's policy that they are requiring these extra steps. I think anything to do with the red flag laws and these procedures, they put the cart before the horse, and they are definitely a violation of due process. If there is an immediate threat of harm to yourself or to others, that's where, there should be an arrest. You should be disarmed, in that particular moment. And then you immediately, they start an investigation. But I mean, we're talking about an actual tangible immediate threat of harm. Did you call someone and say, I'm on my way to come and shoot you? Because if that's the scenario, then that's, you know what I mean? It's a totally different ball game than what we have here, where you simply had a firearm in your vehicle while you were traveling down the road. And there was no threat to anyone. There's no victim. It's all administrative in nature. It's a victimless offense. So it's, I mean,
and that's why I was questioning the whole intent argument. I mean, there was no intent to drive around with an expired plate knowing that the law had changed. There was no intent to harm anybody or cause harm anybody by me being armed in my own vehicle to protect myself and have self-defense for myself. And I'm not understanding, this is what I can't comprehend, is where is the intent, and where they can continue a prosecution, there's no intent to be proven, but yet they still go forward.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is a situation where there's the constitutionally, that there's the, in court, there is a recognized right to open carry, but you have to have a permit to concealed carry, and they are considering you as having concealed carry because you had the weapon in your vehicle when they pulled you
Yes.
over. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, I was open holster carry in my own vehicle. It was not concealed. It could be seen through plain view, right through the window. And yeah, absolutely no issue there whatsoever. But yeah, when they stopped me, I went through all the proper motions, had my paperwork ready, had my hands out the window, let them know where the firearm was located, asked them how they wanted me to proceed, how do they want to proceed, and go from there. And I followed all the directions, and there was never a threat to anybody or either one of the officers.
Right. So, yeah, and I don't remember, it's been a while since I read the statute you're probably being charged with, but I think in Michigan, there is something specific where it says that if you're in a vehicle and you don't have a concealed carry permit, you have to have a weapon away from you, like in a trunk or in a case. Like if you're in a pickup, you have to have it in a case, something like that. Is that what the statute still says there? Is that the part that they're catching
Yes.
you on? Okay. So I just want to reiterate that because obviously laws are completely different on this point all across the country, which really should get to the point of the New York rifle case, right? If we have laws, if the whole point is, which I think that case just took it in such a wrong direction. But the whole point of that case, the court was saying, well, we have to look at history and tradition and what was historically allowed, what were our communities historically, utilizing in terms of laws. And if it was the kind of law the kind of restriction that was already on the books at the time the Constitution was, the Second Amendment was signed and drafted and added to our Constitution, then, then that's the kind of law that still is okay. It's acceptable, even given the Second Amendment. So that's what the Bruin case was all about. And again, I think that's way too narrow of a view of what protections the Second Amendment has to offer. But I think even using that framework, if you look at the fact that on this kind of a point, there's no way that all the states get this right because they're all different. So what was in effect at the time? Could you carry it? As long as you're open carrying it, that's what matters. And, if you happen to have, back in the day, if you had a super long trench coat as you were riding your horse around town, and that happened to cover your otherwise exposed belt that you had your gun on, you know what I mean? Like that, it doesn't. Anyway, I have way too many thoughts all rolling through my head at once, but I wanted to explain for everybody, reiteration of what the facts were for you, because there's some of us who have heard you call in before and we know the specifics, but if somebody's joining the show, we have somebody I saw in the chat here that was in from Florida that's new, for example, and of course down here it's totally different. It is the opposite. You can conceal, wait, am I going to say this right? You can concealed carry without a permit now, as long as you are legally eligible to have a permit. But you cannot open carry in the state of Florida. Even with a permit, you cannot open carry down here. Unless you're hunting or fishing. It is stupid. So it is the exact opposite of what it is in Michigan, right? And so the opposing thought is like it's the stretch to absurdity. Down here, it has to be concealed. But what if what if it's me? What if I'm wearing a dress and I have it strapped to my thigh? And it's Florida. We get gusts of wind. Sometimes we have hurricanes. What if I have a gun strapped to my thigh and I'm wearing a dress and, my dress moves just a little bit, just enough for you to see that I have a gun strapped to my leg? Am I brandishing? I mean, that's basically what, the analogy would be for a prosecutor down here to charge me with in that scenario. The same as you driving in your vehicle. So at any rate, So
I think the courts have, the leftist judges, for the most part, the liberal judges have heavily relied on dicta number 9 in the ruling, and that's what they've relied on a lot to get away from the Bruin decision. So if anybody's interested in reading the Bruin decision on their own, look up dicta number 9, because that's how they get away from the Bruin decision and what the Bruin decision really was meant to be.
You say dicta number 9. Are you saying footnote number 9?
DICTA number 9.
But what do you mean by that?
And when the judges have their, I guess, deliberations about forming an opinion on a ruling, I was told it's called dicta.
No.
And no, it's not. Okay.
No, that's why I wanted to know what you meant by that. So dicta.
Okay. Yeah. That.
So the definition of dicta in a court case is essentially, so if you have, what would be a good analogy? If we were talking about, say, the Dobbs case, the abortion case, and they're going through and they're talking about something, and they just happen to bring in a reference in the main opinion, they just happen to bring in a reference to something about, say, First Amendment freedom of speech issue. And they're just kind of casually referencing it to compare or contrast something, but it's not really part of the main thrust of the argument. It's basically just extra. That extra, then, if it truly is extra, is dicta, and it's not part of the precedent. It's not part of the main point that they're trying to make. So what they would say is, well, this was dicta. Like if, say, the same court in a later case, they would say, well, that was dicta, so it's not binding precedent. It's just something the author of the chief opinion, the lead opinion, was just using for example purposes, basically. So sometimes you have dicta within the body of an argument, like the body of the opinion. Sometimes you have it in a footnote. But there's never there's no numbers to it. So that's why I didn't know what you meant when you said dicta number 9, if you actually meant footnote number 9, because I don't have all the footnotes memorized from that opinion. But I do know there are more than 9. So.
Yeah, that's what the court-appointed public defender basically told me, that that's what it was in the opinion, and basically the judges heavily relied on that. It's the same thing they relied on the other opinion that was done in Grand Rapids area against the lady out there that had the previous case that I mentioned before. She had she was the passenger, had the firearm in her purse. She wasn't the driver, and they charged her.
Well, I mean, that would be a different story as well, because if it's in her purse, it's concealed carry, and that's regardless of if she's in a vehicle or not. If it's in her purse, it's in her purse. So that's concealed.
Right.
That would be completely distinguishable from your case, though, because if it was in an open holster that they could even see through the window, they can't see into her purse, regardless of if she's the driver or passenger. But although I guess it could be clear plastic purse, but if they could see it, it's in an open holster and they can see it with you, that's where there's an arguable difference, except for the fact that in Michigan, there are statutes that specifically say you can't, if you don't have a concealed carry permit, then you can't have it essentially within reach that you could have easy access to it, which is totally asinine. What does the difference make if you have easy access to it in a vehicle versus if you don't? It's not like, what are we learning about road rage? If we're a concealed carry, because I took the concealed carry permit classes in Michigan, I don't remember learning anything about like road rage. That would be the only difference I could think of as to why being in a vehicle somehow makes it different. Where you have to take it off of your belt or whatever. So at any rate, that's where there's a problem, is you'd have to challenge that particular statute. And what I would do is just make sure you keep preserving those claims, keep raising them at every possible opportunity. Making objections where you need to when you're on the record, that kind of thing. Keep making sure that claim stays alive, and then, bring it to appeal at the end. Now, quite frankly, I would do it as an interlocutory appeal. So I wouldn't wait for the case to be over. I would bring it to the Court of Appeals right now. And then if and when they make a dumb choice, I would bring it up to the state Supreme Court right now. But, you know, it's hard to, I've been there. It's hard to be fighting criminal charges up through the appellate ranks while your criminal case is still pending, and especially if there's no stay put in place. So you would have to ask the court for a stay so you can pursue that interlocutory appeal. But an interlocutory appeal on that particular issue, I think at this point is probably too late for you, because I don't remember what the timeline is, but I want to say it might be as short as 30 days from the initial decision that she made. So at this point, if that's the case, then I would just fight the issue, you know, when the case is, when it has concluded. So
I think we're at the point right now, what's probably going to have to happen is see if there's going to be a change in the legislature and in the executive branch coming up here. And I've talked and spoke to multiple candidates, and you know, see if there's a process there to get this reversed once we get people in office that have the ability to reverse, you know, these actions here. But I also wanted to find out if there's possibly any kind of federal civil rights case violation as a result of this situation that the state of Michigan did, because it looks like that might be the way the electors are going to wind up having to do too, is filing a federal civil rights violation case.
potentially, you know, there's a lot of things to consider with your case. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't change the outcome of your case. So let's say that you are found guilty of concealed carrying without a permit because you had it on your person in your vehicle. And so they said, yep, you're found guilty of violating that particular MCL in Michigan. And then you filed a federal, it doesn't matter if it's a state or federal claim, a civil rights claim against, say, you know, Secretary of State Benson, and say, it's all your fault that this happened to begin with because the law changed and you didn't do your job, and had my plates been marked appropriately, then they would have had no reason to stop me. And so it wouldn't change the outcome of your case, but you could prove damages.
Right.
You could prove that there was an actual thing that happened to you that, but for what she did, there wouldn't have even been a stop. So yeah, I think though, if you're going to do all that, quite frankly, I think based on our calls, obviously it's not like you and I are BFFs and have known each other for many, many years, but based on our conversations, you strike me that your bigger issue, if you're going to have, you know, a hill that you're going to pick a hill to die on, it's going to be the Second Amendment issue. It's not going to be the administrative tasks of the Secretary of State. And right. I would fight that Second Amendment issue. Quite frankly, it's more likely to, it's going to impact more people. The outcome is going to be stronger. I mean, it's a more hotly charged issue, and it's the kind of issue that I would think would be ripe in this current climate to try to, you know, if the Michigan Court of Appeals, Michigan Supreme Court does wrong, then you petition for writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court. You know, who knows? Maybe by then I'll have won my case and a rich millionaire will come and try to support all my legal work, and I'll be able to take your case for you up to the Supreme Court. But that'd be a dream of mine, to be able to actually get back into, you know, taking cases to these courts myself. But anyway, so I think that's where, if I were you, I would focus your time and, you know, efforts on. There isn't the same kind of a problem with the statutes that the Michigan electors were charged with. I mean, it's been a long time since I read all those. I initially looked at each of the statutes when they were charged, you know, years ago. But I don't recall there being such inherently wrong of a statute on the books regarding, I'm starting to hear feedback from me in your, okay, maybe it's gone now. Okay. I just don't like to listen to myself talk. So anyway, I don't think there's that big of it's just not the same kind of an issue. So if anybody is going to be held accountable, if government is going to be held accountable, for them, I see it being a civil rights lawsuit, just in a different, context than what would come out of your case. I think for you, fighting the criminal case is really the best way to fight this. Fight the statute itself all the way up.
All right. All right. Well, I just wanted to call and give an update and ask about that civil rights lawsuit situation. So I appreciate the time again, ma'am.
Absolutely. And hopefully we'll continue getting updates and that they'll get better. So, yeah, that's my wish for you. But, in the end, I would rather it be somebody like you who's intelligent and at least knows the basics of why it's wrong than somebody who is, I'll just say, just the average Joe who just, it feels wrong, but they don't know the first clue about how to fight back. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because people like you and I, we can serve a purpose in being the ones that have to bear these crosses, so to speak, and fight these wrongs. So, hopefully.
Oh, I can tell you, when I was testifying, the prosecutor was trying to bait me so hard to get me to react in a negative way. And I knew exactly what he was doing. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm just going to answer your questions because I've testified before as being a police officer and being in the military as a police officer. So I know exactly what you're doing. And I'm going to answer your yes or no questions, and I'm going to just tell you by the matter of fact the way things are. And you're not going to trigger me because it's not going to work. I know your game. So he failed at that miserably.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're, keeping your cool, and just the name of the game, unfortunately, at this point, it's twofold for you. It's do what you can to try to win at the trial court level, because when you're living it, it just needs to be over. But
yes,
make sure the other side of that is that you are preserving the record for appeal. You are laying the groundwork. So take a look at the videos that I've done on appeals in the past, and take a look at the Michigan court rules. I want to say Chapter 7. So take a look at Chapter 7 and look at what the procedures are and the kinds of things you have to show and what the deadlines are, and and make sure that those kinds of things, you're preserving as best you can those particular legal issues so that you can continue to bring them forward. And if it means in the meantime you might need to file another motion to dismiss and more accurately articulate what those legal issues are, then do it. And it, knowing it might full well get denied. But for me,
right,
in my case, I filed my Election Day 2020 arrest case. I ended up filing a motion to dismiss immediately. Like, I was ready to file my motion before the cop even filed the damn ticket. And then they held me off, would not accept it for filing. Initially, eventually gave me my first court date was February 4th, 2021. And it wasn't until July of 2022, somewhere earlier, I want to say it was like April or May of 2022, I had filed another round of another motion to dismiss. And it had some new things like a speedy trial claim and things like that. But I also reiterated some of the same exact legal arguments that I had been making from day one. And lo and behold, we had that motion to dismiss hearing July 7th, 2022. And finally, the judge dismissed it. Now, he dismissed it for all the wrong reasons and said it depended on if my car was parked on the grass, Like, no, it doesn't. The law has nothing to do with where my car was parked. But okay, this isn't a parking violation. It's supposedly a trespass, and cars can't trespass. But anyway, I was glad that it was finally over. But my point to you is that that victory, getting that case to be dismissed, might come in the most obscure ways if you just keep at it and you keep trying to preserve that record. And at that point, I wanted it dismissed, but I was also preserving for my eventual appeal. I was preserving all those issues again. I was making sure that it was clear and they were fine-tuned and everything. So it can serve a dual purpose if you refile your motion to dismiss. So
I understand. I'll mention it to the court-appointed public defender because he's the one that's got to represent me. So I will tell him.
Okay.
Oh, no. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. So let me take a look at the comments here. Shoot, did I... Okay, trying to see if there are questions. Okay, should police use horses on sidewalks to move people after a bar closes at 2 a.m.? Or is it a violation of assembly in public? FYI, no curfew in place. Depends on exactly what's going on there, because what you're saying, you're asking in the context of what the police can do. I'm making myself notes about this. Sorry. So you're asking about what the police can do versus fighting a criminal charge per se. Do you know what I mean? So if the question was, oh, hey, I just got arrested because I didn't immediately disperse right outside the bar. We were on the public sidewalk, hanging out, smoking a cigarette, whatever, drinking my bottle of water, just chilling. And then they arrested us. And so it would be, well, what are you arrested for? And then challenging it that way. But the question about if they can use horses on sidewalks to move people, what I would be interested to know is, are there ordinances in that particular community about horses? Are there ordinances pertaining specifically to sidewalks? And if you are allowed, essentially what I'm getting at is if you either have some sort of sidewalk ordinance or a horse-specific ordinance that essentially prohibits horses from being on the sidewalks altogether, then cops wouldn't have a right to have a horse on the sidewalk. So, at any rate, it would be akin to, yes, if there's something happening, a crime actually taking place, and you have an officer responding on a horse, that'd be the same as they're responding, in a car, and maybe they end up going up onto a sidewalk area to stop a suspect from whatever, doing great bodily injury to someone or something like that. I mean, we see those police chase videos all the time, right? So at any rate, there's a lot wrapped in there, but just to practice. Okay, so so can they, without there being any kind of ordinance that prohibits, horses from being on a sidewalk, I would think there's just a danger to that anyway. I would feel unsafe. Why do they need horses on there? Now, if it's just police officers who are walking and saying, okay, we gotta keep moving, or whatever. Again, it depends on, has it actually gone into the purview of being a lawful order, or at that point is it merely just a suggestion? So it's really open-ended. I don't think it's a great practice, but depending on the history of the area, is it outside say a few bars where there is quite frequently there's always fights or brawls or sexual crimes, sexual abuse happening or whatever? Are there a lot of crimes being reported at bar close in this particular area? And so they're trying to, find proactive ways to reduce the amount of those crimes happening. I'd be curious to know all the situations involved with that. But, okay. Do I believe that those in public offices are the government? That is a very big question. I read your intent of your question, and that is a very big question for me to take on when I'm hopping off to go have some lunch here. I would invite that kind of a question at our next episode. Ask me that right away, not more than an hour in at 1:05 p.m. Ask me at 12:05 that question, and we can have a totally different conversation, and we'll get into that. I have never been a cop. No, I've been a defense attorney. I've definitely been a defense attorney, but not a cop. Okay, so now my mic is working. Okay, so I hope I'm not skipping over any. If I'm not reading yours or acknowledging it at all, I'm just not seeing it, but right now, okay. Oh, see, it just jumped. Dang it. You guys were talking about something about the FBI, talking amongst yourselves there. Dang it. I apologize, guys. It acted like it was at the end, and then all of a sudden it just jumped up. Okay. I think I found where I was. So I'm not seeing anything that says question. I'm just double checking here. Not trying to avoid anybody's question. Okay, it looks like you guys are just having a lot of conversation back and forth. And okay, so yes. Yeah, it was a great call. Obviously in a perfect world, I'd love it if we had 10 people each call in and each of their calls only lasted 5 minutes. And I was able to answer tons of questions for lots of people. But in the real world, legal situations get more complicated. And I know that by me answering that question or that series of questions for you and kind of fleshing out some of those legal issues, it hopefully and quite possibly will be able to help other people who have similar things going on in their situations. So, anyway, so... And it sounds like Lori's saying something about you guys have been having a conversation between federal and state jurisdiction. Anybody who has a question on that, yeah, that's a huge topic to take on at this point. But if you guys want to go ahead and call in 2 weeks, what would that be? 14? I guess that'd be the 23rd. So Tuesday, September 23rd at noon. Any of those big questions, by all means, please call in. Ask the question, or you can put it in the chat. That's fine. Some of those kinds of questions, it's easy enough to pick up out of the chat. But yeah, something federal versus state and exactly what that is, that would be great. So what is your opinion on lawyers doing audits and acting out contrary to their state ethics code for lawyers? Should they be disbarred for threatening lawsuits after identifying as a lawyer? Okay, let me unpack this. I'm not sure I quite understand here. What is your opinion on lawyers doing audits? I'm assuming you mean First Amendment audits? And acting out contrary to their state ethics code for lawyers. I need to know what you mean by audits and what you mean by acting out contrary to their state ethics code. So for example, if you do mean, I'll just try to keep my eyes on you filling in the blanks here. But if you do mean lawyers doing First Amendment audits, and if you're suggesting that there's a state ethics code that would prohibit an attorney from exposing governmental wrong in that way, if that's what you're saying, no, that's not at all. It would because that's essentially what I do. That's what I've been doing. and I've been doing this long before 2020. When I see government wrong, that's why I went into what I was doing. I initially thought I was helping children and families, and that was my passion, and I want to do that. But then, the whole point was, the underdog. I wanted to help the underdog, which is never the government, right? It's never the government. So I've always been doing that as an attorney. And, whether it's speaking at city council meetings or speaking in Lansing or here Tallahassee or, educating people or filing lawsuits or filing amicus briefs and other people's lawsuits, I've done it all because it's our job as attorneys to help speak for others to make sure justice is served, that bad laws are taken off the books, that bad cases are thrown out, that the Constitution is preserved and protected, because it is the rights of the people that should be the centerpiece of everything that government does. And anything that government does to violate the rights of the people is null and void on its face. And we need to work together to bring that reality back to fit the terms of what our Constitution is all about. So for context, this lawyer has been arrested for disorderly, threatening judges on the bench, disrupting court proceedings, and more. He's also identified as a lawyer after being suspended by the state Supreme Court. Okay. So, now I have not been threatened. Well, I have not threatened judges on the bench. I have not disrupted court proceedings, things of that nature. So if you're truly auditing, you're not disrupting. You're not disrupting anything. If you are a true First Amendment auditor or an auditor in any stretch of the imagination, you are observing. That is your primary goal, is to observe and then potentially report, right? Observe and report. So you are a fly on the wall. You are not supposed to be interfering in any way. That's what a true auditor is doing. So if he is taking it a step farther and arguing with judges in the courtroom or threatening judges, or, you're not supposed to be threatening anybody. If you're an auditor, you're not threatening. And now, is he actually threatening? Or is he saying, something like doing a video afterwards showing a particular hearing and then saying, this judge definitely needs to be sued. This judge will be sued because he violated this and this and this. That's not a threat. But if it's an actual threat, if somebody is threatening to harm someone in some way, that's never okay. That's, I don't care who you are. You could be an attorney, you could be a government official, you could be a farmer. You don't have the prerogative to threaten to harm someone. So I guess it depends on what you're saying there. Just doing auditing is not grounds for disbarment, ever. Not at all. We don't lose our First Amendment protected rights simply because we're an attorney. And I have actually argued that. If you didn't, I don't know if you were on the show earlier when I was speaking with the caller from Pennsylvania, I have argued that very point on my own behalf in federal district court already, that I do not lose my First Amendment protected rights simply because I am an attorney. I still have the right to freedom of speech, freedom of press, to petition my government for redress of grievances, you name it. I do not lose those freedoms simply because I have chosen to be an attorney. But if you are otherwise breaking the law, it has nothing to do with being an attorney. If you are breaking the law in a way that you're threatening people, you're disrupting the course of governmental proceedings or, court hearings or something of that nature. Again, I haven't seen the specifics of what you're talking about, but if those are legitimate charges, right? So if those are legitimate charges, then I could see how that might potentially lead to disbarment of the attorney. Each state is different, so how they handle, disbarment or what things qualify you for disbarment versus just being suspended or reprimanded. That varies by jurisdiction, but it potentially could lead to disbarment if you're committing criminal acts, for sure. He is very disruptive in state buildings and while courts are in session. So that's not auditing then. If he's being disruptive, let's put it this way. I'm going to the courthouse, and it doesn't matter that I'm an attorney. Pretend I'm not an attorney. I'm going to the courthouse. I'm 27 years old. I am in an abusive relationship, and I'm going to the courthouse to get an emergency ex parte PPO because my now ex-boyfriend has threatened to kill me because I broke up with him. And I need to get this order signed. And some jackass attorney is out there in the name of auditing, causing a scene and a ruckus in the hallway, and comes into the courtroom, and he has a beef to pick with the judge that's on the bench. I don't give a shit what the hell he's bitching about. He has no right to interrupt the course of proceedings in that moment, and it would directly impact me. Again, this is hypothetical, right? I was never 27, unmarried, and filing a PPO against my boyfriend that tried to kill me. I'm just saying, give it an example, right? Give a scenario, put it to a scenario where, even the bad judges are needed and can do good at times. And so if that judge is now having to deal instead with, perhaps the threat is so great or the disruption is so great that it's closing the courtroom, or, it just causes such a delay that, the last half of cases don't end up getting heard that day and I would have to come back. What if I only had one day off of work? What if I have a kid and I only have the one day that I was able to find somebody to watch my kid so I didn't have to bring him to the courtroom? And this is my one opportunity to be able to get this PPO. That jackass has no right to take over and cause some sort of disruption because of something else that, might be a legitimate beef with the judge or with the court system in general there or whatever. If you get what I'm saying, that's not an appropriate way to petition your government for a redress of grievances or to exercise any kind of First Amendment rights whatsoever. So anyway, it sounds like I answered your question. Okay, so it looks like I was able to answer all the questions that came in today. All right, guys. So I thank you all for joining me today. And like I said, there were two. I don't even remember what they were. I think it was state versus federal and something about who consists of the government. If you guys are still watching right now, I do strongly encourage you to join us 2 weeks from today at noon Eastern Standard Time and ask those questions earlier on so I can give them the full attention they deserve. And we can have our conversations go from there. But with that, I'm just going to ask you guys to keep me in prayer as I am working on my United States Supreme Court case. I am drafting the petition for writ of certiorari to bring to the court. If you're new to the channel and wondering what case I'm talking about, you can find all but one of the documents, the most recent order that dismissed our case. I didn't upload that to my website yet, but all the rest of them are on there. You can go to restorefreedomkh.com/obcase. And let me throw those links on for you. Also, if you can donate even one time, even just $5, it would help immensely. Restorefreedomkh.com/donate. I'm urging you guys to do so. If you need a pop socket, this week's item of the week that I just sent out in our newsletter are these pop sockets. They are genuine pop sockets, the Pop Socket brand, not some sort of knockoff. So most of these outlast our phones. We have moved these pop sockets from one phone to another. We'll have a phone for 2 or 3 years, and then they put all that bloatware and it slows it down. You have to get a new one or it breaks or whatever. And we move it to another phone and then have it for a while. So these are amazing, but I have way more than what I ever need. I bought them to be able to turn around and sell them because there was a point in time that lots of people were buying them and wanting them. And when we moved down here, that slowed down significantly. So help me take this material off my hands for $11.45. I can mail out to you one of these pop sockets. That is just, it doesn't even quite frankly cover all the out-of-pocket costs because the costs of shipping have gone up. But that at least covers the bulk of the cost of what the pop socket costs to make and to ship to you. So you can find that at restorefreedomkh.com/shop. I know, super hard, right? So with that being said, check out all the resources I have available and the stuff you've seen before, and dig around and look at stuff you haven't really dug into before at restorefreedomkh.com/resources, or just go to the main website, restorefreedomkh.com. So at any rate, I appreciate all of you joining the show today. I encourage you to join us next time, the Tuesday, September 23rd at noon Eastern Standard Time. Join us again on YouTube for our show where I can answer your constitutional and legal questions and at least steer you in the right direction. And thank you to the Angry Vet for your donation. I appreciate that. And so if you, I don't know what else I was going to say. I got all distracted here. Hopefully we got the mic issue straightened out. I have no idea. Man, when you have a cause to fight for, that's when evil just permeates and tries to stop you at all costs. That's all I got to say about that. So anyway, with that being said, thank you so much, guys. Have an absolutely wonderful day.